In this video, I'm going to explain everything a new player needs to know about the background and miniatures of the Infinity Universe, and then eat a sandwich. But first, a cautionary tale. Let's have a look at this Infinity game. I wonder what I can spend my money on. Ooh, a ninja! That's a cool looking robot, it looks like something from Battletech. There are a lot of these blue guys. What is it with blue guys in war games? Is that Joan of Arc? Wait, is that Mel Gibson in Braveheart? Is that a cat girl? Are these all animal people? Is that a werewolf? Do they go with the animal people? What is Torchlight Brigade Expansion Pack Beta? How do I even pronounce these ones? Oh god, it's all too much! Has this happened to you? I know it's happened to me. As we've previously talked about, Infinity has a nearly 200-page rulebook that casually drops new words like mimetism, quantronic, and sepsitarized into the conversation with the same frequency as that guy in the pub who keeps talking about being in the SAS. As you can expect, the background of this game is equally complex and intertwined. This is because Corvus Belli have a very different approach to the lore and background of their universe than Games Workshop. I will now attempt to explain all this with a visual demonstration. In Warhammer 40,000, the background is presented like a box of chocolates. For a new player starting with 40k, Games Workshop publishes a new edition of the game every 3 years. Each new edition comes with a big hardback book that will fill you in on the background of the universe and add a small amount of information on every single faction. This book is a bit like a box of Cadbury's Heroes filled with loads of mini chocolates. These Dairy Milk bars are the Space Marines, these Twirls are the Elder, and these Eclairs are the Leagues of Votan, so they get picked out and put in the bin. If you like one of those armies, you can buy a codex that contains everything you need to know about that faction, just like a larger pack of Twirls. After you have finished your pack of Twirls, you can then go back into a store and you will know everything about the Elder products you see on the walls. However, Infinity is like a sandwich. Your bottom layer of bread is the Infinity N4 core book, published in 2020, which contains a potted history of the game up until that point. Your top layer of bread is the Infinity N5 core book, published in late 2024. You can dispense with the fillings and just eat the single core book. It's still delicious, but it only contains a brief history of the setting and information for 7 out of the 11 factions, and unit descriptions for the models that Corvus Belli have produced from Operation Sandtrap and onwards, basically stuff from their modern catalogue. So after digesting that slice of bread, you are still going to be confused about what on earth these Dire Foes mission packs are, or where this Maximus guy comes from, or what these different sectoral armies are all about. In addition, you won't learn anything more than a passing reference to major factions, like, for example, Aleph. There is no such thing as a codex for each faction, so if you're trying to learn the background to tell the difference between your Hackislam Gaz Mutwer and your Hackislam Nafutun, you are out of luck. In order to really understand what you're looking at in a shopfront, you will need to assemble the Infinity Sandwich. To do that, we need our fillings, things like the Infinity expansion books. This Brie is Uprising, which covers the JSA split from Yuching. This Garlic is the Third Offensive, covering the invasion of Paradiso by the Alien Combined Army. This Tub of Sardines is Daedalus Fall, that introduces the other alien race, the Tohar. These Blueberries are N-Song, published after N4, that moved the timeline along a bit and appears to wipe out or at least marginalize the Tohar faction. You also have the bits of lore for the sectoral subfactions and unit breakdowns published in the Operation box sets, like Operation Sandtrap. We'll just dollop in a bit of crispy chili sauce to represent that. You also have the Infinity role-playing game by Modifius, which is basically an entire burger by itself, which we can add into our sandwich. Meanwhile, you have things like Outrage, Corvus Belli's own manga, Infinity Betrayal, their own graphic novel, Infinity Defiance, their own dungeon crawler, and various other games like Aristea, soon to be renamed Infinity Hexadome Legends, as the sprinkles of salt on top and the side of kimchi to go with it. This sandwich, once we assemble it, contains information about every form of currency in each planet in the human sphere. It contains a working document about the system of social credit that the nomads use as the backbone of their economy. You want to know where the internal reproduction organs on the alien Morats are? It's in the sandwich. You want to know about the genetically engineered dolphins that fly the nomad spaceships? It's in the sandwich. The dolphins probably should have been represented with the sardines, now that I think about it. I'm honestly surprised we don't yet have an Infinity cookbook, although after this video, if Corvus Belli are watching, I am available. Oh. No. Ah. Ah. Mmm, delicious. As a new or curious player, you are pushed towards the Essential Start Collecting set and the larger Operation Sandtrap set, which are built to get you in the door and explain a bit about the Pan-Oceania and the JSA factions. And then the training wheels get taken off completely, and suddenly you are in the deep end looking at the Dire Foes Mission Pack Gamma Xanadu Rush and a Cascuda vs Maximus pre-order exclusive pack and saying, these look really cool, but what on earth are they and where do they fit? Luckily, Corvus Belli have sponsored this video on Infinity, so by the time I'm finished, you should know everything you need to have a decent understanding of the universe and its products. Let's take you through it all. I'm gonna have to I need to get rid of the sandwich out of the room now. It's a very hot day and it smells, so I'm just gonna get rid of it now. Seal that up somewhere. A nuclear waste site. That smelt worse than the 3D printer, I think.
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
Don't do that again.
What if people want me to do it again? What if this is my best video ever?
Then you can film it somewhere else. You can film it somewhere. 'Cause that is, honestly, I felt physically sick.
Promise not to do it again. So if you pick up Operation Sandtrap, you'll see a couple of these icons on it. The blue wavy one with the white dots and the red and white circle. These circular icons are plastered all over Corvus Belli products, and they represent all the factions, sub-factions, and individual models in the Infinity universe. Corvus Belli loves circles. In fact, every single model in the game has a unique circle that goes with it, from the Armata Project 2 Ratnik Spitfire of Ariadne to the Gujar squadrons of Yuching. These ones on Operation Sandtrap refer to the factions Pan-Oceania and the JSA. Let's start with Pan-O. In the background of the Infinity universe, Pan-Oceania, or Pano, controls the most planets. They have the best economy and have the most advanced technology within the human sphere. One of the ways to prove their technological dominance is by having a very high amount of their population implanted with cubes. Throughout the human sphere, one of the most important pieces of technology are these cubes. They are automated memory recording and storage devices. You can see this brown-yellow USB icon on the data sheets of the models that have cubes implanted. If you have a cube implanted in you, great. The pros to this are: you can be backed up. You can have instant full body diagnostics so injuries can be healed faster. You get early detection of diseases, genetic conditions, and cancer. And because you have that backup, you can also be resurrected upon death, although you have to be either very important or very lucky with the resurrection lottery. It sounds great, and it is, until you get hacked. Bad times. Despite this, cube use is considered a normal part of life in Pano society. The benefits outweigh the risks. Pano has the incredibly cool nickname of the hyperpower. The old superpowers of Earth, the USA, Europe and Russia, they have largely collapsed and will pick back on them later. The economic crisis that ruined these old superpowers left in its wake this new alliance of Australia, New Zealand, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Chile and Brazil, as well as the Neo-Vatican Church. The models in this set fit in both the Pano generic army list, but they also represent the Kestrel Colonial Force, one of Pano's sectoral armies. Sectorals are essentially sub-factions of the major factions in the game that have a much more limited selection of models to pick from, but as a trade-off they are allowed more of certain rarer models. Plus they have unique units that don't appear in the main faction's generic army list. And occasionally they also contain some units that appear in other factions. For example, the Kestrel Colonial Force Sectoral can take the Japanese Yamabushi, a model that can also fit in the Japanese Successionist Army and their sectoral Shinden Butai. You can see where this gets confusing, especially if you casually pick up a Yamabushi model on shelves. You'll see that it is packaged with the icons for the JSA all over it, but it is in fact a multi-faction model. This isn't something you expect from an average wargame, and you can see how in trying to explain the beginner factions, we are already deep in the weeds of the Infinity Army building system. The ingredients that make up these sectoral sub-factions are mixed together like the blueberries and chili sauce in my sandwich that's now in the bin outside. In the background, the Kestrel Colonial Force was the force sent to the newly discovered planet of Shinju to claim it in the name of Pan-Oceania. That is the planet you are fighting to claim in Operation Sandtrap. But the JSA might have something to say about that. The Japanese Successionist Army is only a minor power, although minor in Infinity terms means that it only holds significant sway over a single planet with minor settlements elsewhere. Minor powers, as you can tell, are significantly more powerful than the current crop of superpowers in our universe. Originally, old Japan had been consumed by the major power Yuching, who we will talk about next, and their society has since reclaimed the old focus on Bushido, the way of the samurai, Zen Buddhism, and the Japanese emperor. Hence, samurai swords all around. The Japanese Successionist Army managed to succeed from Yuching, the Asian giant, and through pure luck and circumstance managed to gain a significant foothold on the planet Shinju after it was discovered through a wormhole in space. Yes, there are wormholes in space that connect all these different planets together. That's how interstellar travel works in this universe. Unfortunately, uprisings are typically not bloodless affairs, and this uprising in question resulted in the deaths of the entire crew of the Pan-Oceania ship Thunderchild, as it was overtaken by its Japanese crew en route to Shinju. The Shinden Butai you see in Operation Sandtrap are the militia the JSA assigned to secure its hold on this new planet. I say new planet, but the planet named Shinju clearly isn't new. They seem to have been home to an alien race at one point. This alien race are referred to as the Defeated, as the ruins on the planet point to them being wiped out by an unknown enemy at some point in the past. The planet's atmosphere has been contaminated with an alien bioweapon to which prolonged exposure proves fatal, which is why all the models in the Sandtrap box set and the extra Shinden Butai expansion sets are all wearing respirators. Don't breathe in the air here, otherwise you get the red fever. Another way of avoiding that red fever is using a tag, a suit of tactical armoured gear that either totally encompasses its user or that can be piloted remotely off-site. And the JSA tags, as you can imagine, are the coolest looking ones in the game. Tags are a key part of the Infinity universe, and every faction has one, especially the faction we will be talking about next. As you might have guessed from the successionist part of the JSA's name, they were once part of a larger body, and that body wants its pound of flesh as well. Yuching is that other major power. It is only second in size to the hyperpower of Pan-Oceania. Essentially, way back in history, the People's Republic of China expanded and took over the whole of the Far East. But to ensure the cohesion of the vast territories of Myanmar, Bhutan, Cambodia, Laos, Mongolia, Nepal, Thailand, Japan temporarily, as well as best and worst Korea. To maintain this hegemony, it renamed and re-established itself under the banner of the State Empire of Yuching, or translated to English, the Jade capital. In order to ensure the peace was kept between these different nations, it formed an internal and external security service that answered directly to the Dragon Emperor of Yuching. Here we are talking about the name of one of their sectoral armies, the Imperial Service. The biggest model in the Imperial Service lineup is their Imperial Tag Police, the Dragon King, or in Yuchingo, the Long Wang. If I had a superpower, it would be the ability to laugh exactly like Sid James, which I would do right now. Yuching is a big deal in the Infinity Universe. In fact, the only reason the unstoppable force of the Asian giant hasn't already overtaken Pano is that it was extremely slow to start development into space, having seen firsthand what happened to the fallen superpowers of the USA, Europe, and Russia. And while we are on that subject, what exactly did happen to the Old Guard? Way back in the 1st century of the 3rd millennium, humanity discovered the first wormhole, and through that wormhole it found the planet Dawn, the first habitable world outside of Earth. Earth had been pretty battered around by this point, so the combined European Space Agency, NASA, and the Russian Federal Space Agency sent a colony ship full of North Americans, Europeans, and Cossacks to claim it in the name of humanity. This went off without a hitch, so back on Earth, a second ship was built, the Aora. And just as the Aora was on the way through the portal to Dawn, the wormhole collapsed, destroying the ship, isolating the colonists, and sending the entire economy of Earth into freefall. After nearly 2 centuries by themselves, the colonists have met back up with the rest of the human sphere and renamed themselves Ariadna, after the planet they were sent to colonize. At this time, the colonists had split up into areas of North Americans, English and Scottish, French, and Russians, which all came under constant attack by giant wolf antipodes, the race native to Dawn. While they lack the advanced technology of the major powers, as well as access to Maya, the kind of super internet that the rest of the human sphere has, they make up for it in having biochemically controlled some of their antipodes, as well as having access to dog faces, human and antipode hybrids, as well as the SAS and the resurrection of William Wallace, just because. Resurrections of historical figures are a whole thing in the Infinity Universe. In fact, in order to explain how that even came about, we have to discuss Silk, and in order to discuss that, we ought to discuss Hackislam. The final major power in the human sphere is Hackislam, although you wouldn't know it as they are absent from the N5 core book. So, like a lot of countries and religions in the Infinity Universe, Islam has gone through quite a few changes with all this new technology that's been introduced. In fact, they have begun the worship of a Scottish delicacy of offal wrapped in a sheep's stomach, because Hackislam, get it? It's haggis. Yeah, this is the kind of edgy humour you can expect if you sign up to the oldendemon Ko-fi account. Also, you can help support the channel and get access to awesome stuff I am working on behind the scenes. Anyway, the Hackislam of the Infinity Universe is a newer, more humanist version of Islam that places the power in the hands of the practitioners and away from any potentially radicalizing elements. Its inception was pretty good, but it needed more than just a catchy belief system. In a stroke of either incredible fortune or some amazing propaganda, Hackislam's creators managed to determine the exact date that the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven in the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem, recreated the night sky as it would have been directly overhead the mosque at that time, and hired the remnants of NASA to search that quadrant of space looking for a sign in the heavens. Not only did they find a wormhole, not only did they find a habitable planet through the wormhole, the planet Borak, but that planet happened to contain a resource found nowhere else in the human sphere: silk. This substance is crucial to advanced medicine and the recreation of consciousness. Control of silk gives Hackislam significant influence in interstellar affairs and makes them the unrivaled master of biotechnology. If you have ever read or watched Dune, you can kind of see the influence here. Silk is kind of like spice in that it's a resource unique to the desert planet of Borak. But instead of allowing for interstellar travel, Silk allows access to cube-based resurrections. As this is quite a popular thing to have with the upper classes all around the universe, it gives Hackislam quite a bit of power. A power they have to defend with their military might. One of their sectorials is the Assassin Baram, Hackislam's branch of military intelligence and assassination. You remember we were talking about the unusual models in different sectorials? Well, for reasons, the Assassin Baram army has access to Mukmura, a mercenary dog warrior. You are going to have to check out the Human Sphere wiki to learn all about why that is a whole thing. Please, Corvus Belli, just publish a codex or something that contains all this information in. People will gladly pay. So that's all the factions who are human nation states. From now on, things will get progressively weirder and wilder, starting with a faction that is just a letter and a number. O12 are kind of an evolution of the United Nations, only this time with more of a bite. Funded by mandatory contributions from the human states, they provide general peacekeeping, law and order, but also, crucially, oversight of the human sphere's own artificial general intelligence, Aleph. O12 is comprised of various bureaus, each that operates a kind of carrot and stick operation between each of the other factions. These are bureaus like Bureau Hermes that operates research into wormholes and jump lanes, and Bureau Tandy that sends expeditions beyond known space. O12 have a couple of sectorials, one of which, the Torchlight Brigade, is designed to seek out and keep the colonisation of new worlds from spiralling into open conflict. And to ensure this, its members are among the best armed and armoured of any faction in the sphere. They also use a lot of non-lethal ammo because that's a thing in the game. The reason you might want this is that you can easily immobilise a lot of different unit types, making them much easier to manage on the battlefield. The models have been criticised for being a bit Space Marine-y. Personally, I think that's just the case because they have heavier armoured troopers than regular infantry troopers, and of course, they are blue and yellow. But they are going to need that heavy armour because the criminals in the Infinity Universe got their own entire faction. To be fair to the Nomads, not all of them are criminals. But the trouble with a floating group of communes that anyone can join is that anyone can join. From the former prisoners, political dissidents and refugees that make up the Corregidor, one of the 3 giant spaceships that make up the Nomad Nation, to the Tunguska that is filled with financial syndicates, crypto bankers, cutting-edge hackers and a massive vault filled with super secret information. And the Bakunin, which is just jammed to the brim with anarchists, post-humanist body modifiers like catgirls and shark boys, as well as Saint Mary of the Knife, a techno-religious cult. Basically, if you want to do it, the Nomads will allow it as long as it doesn't directly affect the safety of the hull of the ship. Each of those giant spaceships have their own theme in the game, and each of them make up the 3 sectorials of the Nomad Nations. Unfortunately, these nomads are often their own worst enemy. This is a good point to talk about the mouthful that is, deep breath, Infinity Code 1 Xanadu Rush Dire Foes Mission Pack Gamma. Going through this in order, Infinity Code 1 was a cut-down version of Infinity designed as an entry into the rules system. The idea that you would buy products labelled as Code 1 and they would fit together in smaller lists with lighter rules. Unfortunately, the general word is that existing players did not take to it, leading to extremely low uptake and its eventual removal, although products with this branding are still available. Dire Foes are a series of mini-mission sets that Corvus Belli produce. You get a scenario and a few models between 3 and 4, split between a pair of factions. They started naming them from 1 to 14, but have now moved to the Greek alphabet, although who knows what they'll do once they get to Mu and Nu, the less cool sounding letters in that alphabet. Mission Pack Gamma Xanadu Rush is this one. Techno-terrorists in a Nomad space station have created some dangerous biomodified creatures, and the Nomads and Ariadna have sent some skilled operatives to clean up the mess. But why run away from humanity to hide on a ship like this? Because of Aleph. Aleph, in all caps, is the single artificial general intelligence allowed to exist in the human sphere. If any other AGIs arise, they get deaded very quickly. Aleph was created as a benevolent force to serve humanity and to handle everything. And of course, as we all know too well, whenever something comes along claiming to serve humanity's best interests as a whole, there are never any problems at all with achieving that objective, something about the ends justifying the means. It is pervasive everywhere and extremely powerful. Using the creation of artificial bodies called L-hosts, Aleph can stick a fragment of itself into a body and just use that where it needs a physical presence. And what's the first thing you do if you have the power to literally play God? Naturally, you create Maximus, a gladiator champion for the human sphere's favourite reality TV show, Aristea, of course. After that, what's the second thing you do? Well, you recreate Brad Pitt in True Romance.
Well, they were here and they said that they were going to go there. Then they went.
No, wait, you recreate Brad Pitt in Troy.
Imagine a king who fights his own battles. Wouldn't that be a sight?
It turns out Aleph has a real thing for mythic Greek warriors. Now, I know what you're thinking. How's this all work? You can't resurrect Achilles because Achilles wasn't a real person. But if you have an AGI, it turns out you don't need to. Humanity's collective knowledge has an idea of who Achilles was and what he represented, and Aleph can take that and stick that in an advanced L-host, and just like that, bingo! It created a good enough version of Achilles to serve as Aleph's ultimate warrior. I suppose Aleph could have just recreated the ultimate warrior. Actually, that's probably not a good idea. So Achilles and a variety of the mythic pantheon like Hector, Ajax and Agamemnon make up the Steel Phalanx, a sectoral army designed to fight the alien combined army and its own evolved intelligence. Or at least that was the plan. It turns out that Aleph might have miscalculated. Oh yeah, that's the problem with the ends justifying the means, when the means goes off to fight with the aliens. The aliens in question here are the Combined Army, the main antagonist to the factions of the human sphere, and in fact, the entire rest of the universe. Otherwise known as the hegemony, this is a coalition of multiple enslaved species. Have you ever heard of the Fermi paradox? The idea that the universe is vast with billions of stars and planets, and that given the age and size of the cosmos, intelligent life should have arisen many times and spread across the galaxy. The Fermi paradox asks, if that is the case, then why haven't we seen any signs of it? The answer is that in the history of the Infinity Universe, most galactic civilizations failed and were destroyed. However, a few of them achieved absolute consciousness and evolved to a higher plane, vanishing from the universe completely after achieving absolute universal comprehension. A fate surely destined for Richard Osman. One species, known as the rationalists, created a self-aware quantum computer to compile all the data they've ever worked out and give them the answer to the universe. But rather than just producing the number 42 and dropping the microphone, it did something even more awesome. After generations of computing all this knowledge, it turned around, told the rationalists that they weren't mature enough to handle the knowledge, and promptly vanished from existence itself. In response, the rationalists kept developing AIs and trying to feed them as much information as possible in the hope that one day, one of these enslaved AIs will take them to enlightenment. They have become the hegemony and are trying to feed everything relevant into that machine and recycle anything the machine doesn't need into its own combined army, into finding more species so they can repeat the process over again. In order to achieve this, it makes use of terrifying Sepsor voodoo technology that can take control of anyone with a cube, a process in-game called putting the model into a sepsitorized state. The sectoral armies of the Combined Army are the individual races it has assimilated into it, like the violent frontline troops of the Morat Aggression Forces, or the infiltrating Shazvasti Expeditionary Force. And unfortunately for humanity, now Team Achilles. It's that guy again, Brad Pitt. As the individuals in Achilles' personal fire team fell behind enemy lines during conflict with the combined army, Aleph decided it was too risky to resurrect them given the threat of a resurrected hero bringing some of the hegemony's parasitic code into Aleph's network. A bit like when I come back from a wargaming convention, I have to strip off and be hosed down in the garden in order to not bring the smell into the house. Unfortunately, Achilles being Achilles decided to defect to the combined army in order to safeguard the human population who had been overtaken by the combined army's territory in the human sphere. And in return, the hegemony resurrected his team that he loves so much. It's almost as if these Greek fables served as a series of lessons to humanity rather than an instruction booklet. Maybe the nomads had a point after all. There is another alien army knocking around, or at least there once was, the Tohar. They are playable using the rules on the Infinity Army Builder, but the models are long out of production. Imagine a kind of Legends datasheet style army like how the Sisters of Battle existed for over a decade. They originally approached humanity as allies against the combined army, but turned against them to prevent an alien artifact known as a Zichi digester from falling into the hands of the hegemony. This resulted in sudden changes to the laws of physics of the planet Paradiso that are now known as quantum anomaly zones. It also resulted in the destruction of a large proportion of the Tohar High Command and their marginalization in the universe. Also, the Tohar Society loves the number 3, which incidentally is 3 more models than the faction will be getting anytime soon. And that's the end of my short introduction into the Infinity Universe. If you want to know how the actual game plays, click this video here and you will continue your journey of knowledge. But be careful you don't achieve absolute universal comprehension and disappear. See you next time. Bye!